Hey everybody, Breakthrough Health and Life Coach Glenn Hattem here. I'm here with my good friend Sherry Young, who is an occupational therapist and extraordinaire at a lot of different things these days. Sherry and I guess we met I guess it's been over a decade now. So it's been quite some time since we last.
Probably like, yeah, 20, could be 20 years.
Shit, yeah, it could be 20 years. Yeah, Sherry was a client of mine, became good friends, and we have just stayed in touch throughout the years. And I've always gone to Sherry for expert input for anything going on with my body or clients. She's just someone that I truly respect, and I just am always impacted from time shared. So if you've got your notepad handy and a pen, we're gonna just dive right in and get to know a little bit about Sherry's journey. So maybe Sherry, you could tell everybody about maybe what you're up to in the world these days and what you do, and then we can kind of, I like to just jump back in time and figure out how did you get wired this way?
Right. So I'm an occupational therapist by training, but I carved out a niche for myself as an expert witness. And basically that is someone who has a wealth of knowledge in a certain area, and attorneys hire me to evaluate their clients who have been injured in some way. It could be a car accident, could be a work injury. I've had people who have gone to the dentist and the x-ray machine fell on their head. I mean, all kinds of things, and also chronic illness and conditions. And I evaluate them over a period of 1 to 3 days and decide how their injuries have impacted their ability to perform their jobs, but also how they can engage in their home activities, social activities, community activities, leisure things. And I testify on their behalf if they don't settle. So it's a wonderful niche. I'm basically the only occupational therapist in town who does what I do. So I pretty much don't have any competition, which is nice. That was a good decision to make, to find something where there's not a huge amount of competition. And so
I don't think there's even competition. A lot of your folks fly in from out of town too. So
yeah, right. Yeah, there may be a handful of people really that do what I do around the country. I go to continuing ed courses and realize, how blessed I am to have this wonderful opportunity. And that's one of the things I want to do in the future, is get out there on the road and start telling other occupational therapists about this amazing opportunity. And I stumbled upon it when my business was in Boulder in the Crossroads Garden building. There was a gal that moved into the suite next door, and her plaque on her door said that she was a marketing consultant. And I went over there, and her name was Grace. And I said, "Hey, Grace, what do you think I can do to help my outpatient occupational therapy clinic?" And she said, "You know those evaluation things you do?" And she's waving her hands. And I said, "Yeah, the functional capacity evaluations." She said, "Attorneys would love them." And I said, "What on earth for?" She said, "Oh, you can help them outline how their clients have been impacted by their injuries." And she said, "All you need to do is put on about a half-day seminar, go rent a conference room, and tell people about what you do." Well, at that point, I was providing a lot of different occupational therapy services. I specialized in shoulder and hand rehabilitation, cognitive rehab. I was doing job site evaluations, ergonomics, a bunch of different things. And I did these functional capacity evaluations because they're used quite frequently in workers' compensation. So a worker gets hurt, you have to evaluate them, make sure they're safe to go back to work. Well, I was doing about maybe 1 a month. And then after I put on this little half-day conference, I was doing 10 a month. And all of a sudden I was like, whoa, this is amazing. So that's really what launched my career as an expert witness. And that was probably back in, 2000, I guess. So I've been working as an expert for 22 years, and I've been an occupational therapist for about 32 years. So I've been around a while.
Now, how does someone even get into this field? Like what kind of, I guess we should even like go back a little further to what kind of kid were you back in the days? Were you just this like brilliant A student, or were you a little bit of a rebel? Because I know some sides of you.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I've always been a rebel. I think, that's just part of who I am. But school came easy to me, thank goodness. I got A's and B's. I didn't have to study much. I was a good crammer, which comes in handy when you have to testify, because I can cram the night before and have the whole file memorized and rattle it off in court. I was super athletic, very outdoorsy, but I always challenged why. Why this? Why that? I mean, I drove my mother crazy. Sherry, stop asking why. And her answer was always, because why is a crooked letter. Well, that was never good enough for me. So, I definitely questioned everything around me. And of course, that helps me tremendously when I evaluate people. I'm like, well, why can't you do this? Or what is it, that prevents you from doing these activities, or, earning a living?
So your
And
brain is wired to just not take things at face value ever. It's just like,
no,
even the simplest thing, it's like,
no,
there's maybe more to this. I'm
right,
curious. You were curious and you weren't going to let anyone squash that.
right. I, and, I'm skeptical, but only really in situations where there are people who claim to be, the authority on whatever. I work with doctors a lot. I work with attorneys a lot. And what I've learned over the years too is, people can be very narrowly focused and not look at the big picture. And although they, may be very experienced or whatever, their view could be very, very different from everybody else's. And I've always been extremely open to other people's opinions and views, which is difficult in today's times, right? Where everybody has opinions. But of course, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know anything. And I've always been the one, you get a post on Facebook and I look it up. I'm really good at research. I research everything, because there's so many things I don't know and I'm learning constantly. So that's, I think, why I'm really good at what I do. But I'm also a people person. And growing up, I was Miss Social. I was in this club and that club, and had to be around my friends and doing things and wanted to help everybody. And so, of course, that's been a good asset for me as an occupational therapist. That's what drives me in my professional and personal life. I love to help people. And of course, that can be unhealthy to a certain degree. But once you learn how to balance it and not, compromise your own healthy boundaries and that kind of thing, it flourishes even more. It's amazing. So what I take away from my job every day is just the satisfaction of knowing I help people. And you have to understand that people that come to me are in chronic pain and they haven't been heard by all their medical practitioners, maybe completely not believed, you're faking, or, you're not in a body cast. There's nothing wrong with you, especially with all these autoimmune issues people have these days. And so they come to my office and they're afraid because they know they're going to do all these tests for physical and cognitive and endurance and all these, different things. And they're already hurting. They don't want to do it. They come in, and myself and my therapist that I have working with we have such a casual environment. We talk to them, we make them feel comfortable. And by the end of the day or 3 days, they're like best buddies. They're like, thank you so much. This was so much fun. And thank you for listening to me. And, you get these testimonials. Thank you so much. Often we diagnose people, even we're not doctors. We don't really diagnose, but nobody has really caught the underlying issue. And because I've been a therapist for so many years, I'm very familiar with symptoms related to a wide variety of conditions. And I will say, oh, well, have they not said that you have a post-concussive syndrome or you have this visual insufficiency problem? We're like, no, thoracic outlet syndrome. It's another one that often goes overlooked. And I'll call their attorney or their doctor and say, hey, you might want to consider sending them for a workup to see if they have these issues. And then they're accurately diagnosed, and then their treatment goes the way it should go. And it just gives me such satisfaction to know that I'm helping people significantly change their quality of life when it's been so miserable,
Yeah, you seem to be the person that people come to and have this experience of like, oh my gosh, I might have been misdiagnosed as to what's going on.
Right. Yeah.
uh,
Yep.
and because of, and you bring this heartfelt energy and care for people too, because you're looking at the whole person,
Right.
not
The whole
just
person. That's
what was
right.
on the piece of paper.
Yeah. I would say, you were in a car accident and when you're litigating these kinds of things, they want to say, oh, well, you had this depression or anxiety before your accident, and so we're not going to cover that. But a lot of times these types of events exacerbate things greatly. And what I tell people, I'm like, you're in a car accident. All of you was in the car accident, not just your back, not just your shoulder,
Right.
your mind was in the accident. Your emotions were in, everything of you was in the accident. And it really makes them feel like they're being seen as a whole individual. And that's very satisfying.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know about me, but I've been in 2 major car accidents where I got crushed by a semi into just basically the whole entire car got crushed into the center divide at about 70, 80 miles an hour. And the whole car became like that Tron motorcycle. And then I was also
Wow.
standing outside of a car and I got crushed by a bus that crushed me into the car. And you would just think, oh, I'm fine, because actually physically I was fine. I mean, I somehow, like, luckily I had a lot of muscle mass on me,
Right.
that protected me. But yeah, these things, that these traumas that we have in life, they impact us not just from a physical standpoint, but emotional, even
Yeah.
spiritually. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you're always, my experience from being in your office, you always take care of people on all the different levels of where they're
Sure.
at. You're addressing that. So, like, you go above and beyond what might be expected in the practice. So
Right. Yeah, I was blessed with that personality. And as an expert witness, I think you have to have a certain type of personality. And I think I'm very complex. I have a lot of different sides, and I'm really happy and fun. And we joke all the time. But when it's time to get serious and get on that witness stand, you see Mama Bear come out fighting for somebody.
yeah, people might not know that behind the scenes of the social butterfly and cracking jokes, you're also,
Yeah.
I've seen you be a badass on stage with fitness competitions. I've seen you,
Yeah.
also being a rock climber, in individual sport, type activities. And so there's being multifaceted has probably, brought a lot of strength to this
Right.
unique. I mean, you have probably been able to seize this opportunity because of all the different facets of yourself.
And
So
what I learned recently, I did a little retreat down in Sedona uh, to work through some personal stuff in my life. And one of the things that I learned about myself, which I hadn't known until 2 years ago, was that I'm a highly sensitive person. And I had never heard that term before.
okay.
And when I heard that term, I'm like, highly sensitive. It makes it sound like I'm a crybaby or I can't cope with the world or whatever. And they're like, oh, no, that's not what that means at all. It means that I'm wired in such a way that I am extremely perceptive of my surroundings. Some characteristics of an HSP is loud noises startle you. You don't like a lot of chaos around you. And all my life, I thought something's wrong with me. Like, for instance, I was visiting my parents and they had the TV up really high and it was just driving me
That's
crazy.
too
And
much. Yeah, overload.
I turned the volume down and I said, I'm really sorry, Mom and Dad. I go, this drives me crazy. And it drives me crazy that it drives me crazy
Mm,
because it didn't seem to fit in how everybody else in the world functioned. So, once I learned that I'm wired this way. It's just who I am. I need to embrace it because there's a lot of good that comes of that. I'm an empath. I pick up on people's emotions tremendously.
same.
It's it's hard for me not to, internalize that, but I'm learning how to do that better. But it's the HSP in me that's made me so good at evaluating people.
Yes.
So much easier to read them and understand them and
Yeah, because you're
empathize with them.
just getting that super. You pick up on these little subtle hits.
Mhm.
So, energetically, it's like it's
Yeah.
not. doesn't matter what's being conveyed out someone's mouth. You're picking
Yeah,
up like the backstory. And maybe it's
right,
crazy, the loud TV. Maybe that's crazy.
right,
Maybe you're
right.
not, like getting to that, finally arriving at that place in life where
Right.
like, oh, all these years, like I thought maybe there was something off with me, but
Yeah,
maybe there's something wacky with that a little bit.
right, right. And I'm learning I need my downtime, because wanting to give so much, I have a tendency to help people too much, take up too much of my time. And I'm definitely learning that I need my alone time and my space. And I've always known that, but it just makes more sense now. And I definitely prioritize it more than I have before, because wow, it just totally allows me to recharge. And my life is very stressful, very fast paced. And I've learned that, even just little snippets, it could be 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there, do some breathing, go for a walk by myself without the dogs. As much as I love my dogs, it's not the same as walking by myself. And that has helped me tremendously too, just to be kinder to myself. HSPs tend to be extremely hard on themselves.
Yep.
I know I can do more. I know I can do better.
Mhm.
And so just changing those messages in my head to, you're doing great, take a break. And one of the books that I listened to recently said, however you treat other people, treat yourself that way. And I'm always cutting people slack. I'm always telling people, take it easy,
Right.
but I don't follow that advice. So
Got that
that's
harsh critic inside that we want to like say, okay, hey,
right,
I hear you. You're trying to keep me safe and have
right,
me do well in the world. But maybe there's a different way, more gentler approach. I give all that. I'm so generous with other people.
right,
But maybe part of you had, this is my success formula for getting through life, is having this harsh. I love the saying, don't beat the willing horse. It's like, you're here,
right.
you're doing your
Yeah,
best. Like you don't have to like beat yourself
yeah,
up on the way there,
right,
so that no one
right.
else will, maybe. Um,
Hmm.
but maybe let's talk a little bit about that as you move from the inner experience to the outer experience, how important it is having support and having team, and what that's been like for you,
Yeah.
navigating some of the growth challenges. Because it's not, as we know as entrepreneurs, it's it's not like this. It's more
Mhm.
like this, and if we can learn how to surf those waves, it's a steady upward trajectory. But it
Yeah,
does, underline, you know,
right.
it's we have to learn how to acclimate
Hmm.
to something that might be for a sensitive system.
Right,
There's a lot of positive dialogue, as you know, that needs to go on with that.
right. Yeah, I think, I went into private practice in 97. I was working in a pain clinic and I was doing functional capacity evaluations for the clinic. And one of the doctors took my report and he threw it on my desk and he goes, you can't write this, because their goal at that clinic was to get people back to work without restrictions. Well, I was trained as a functional capacity evaluator, and my professional opinion was this person couldn't work full time. And of course, politically, that didn't help us from a marketing standpoint, right?
Hmm.
So I decided that to be the professional that I wanted to be, I had to go out on my own. Very few occupational therapists go into private practice. You see a ton of physical therapists, and I believe that it's a different type of personality that goes into each of these professions.
Mhm.
Um, but as an occupational therapist, well, actually, my PT friend Darcy, remember she was in the building
Yes.
with me.
Yes. Yeah, I
He
do.
talked me in because she was in private practice, and she coerced me into hanging a shingle next to her in the building. And I said, okay, I was frightened, of course,
Yeah.
and, it went great. But I think, of course, I didn't have a business plan. I didn't have really any vision. I just wanted to do a functional capacity evaluation and say what I wanted to say. But in that, at that time, looking back, if, one of the mistakes I made was one, not really doing an accurate business plan and not having a clear vision, and also being afraid to take a business loan. And I think this was huge for me. You start out and you're like, okay, I'm just, as I make money, I'll spend money. But as my business grew, I didn't really have that safe padding financially to do the things I wanted to do to grow the business.
Mhm.
So instead of growing a little bit more quickly, I think it took forever. And then when the recession hit in '08, things kind of tanked. And I didn't have the staff, I didn't have the financial means to really keep it going. So I closed the clinic down and I moved to New Mexico, came back 5 years later, this time with a completely different mindset. And the mindset was, I have to look at this as a business. I'm not just an occupational therapist, hanging a shingle and, trying to help people. I want to make something that can withstand a recession and, changes and whatnot. So I took out a $50,000 business loan. And boy, just psychologically, that made all the difference. I was fearful of going into debt. What if it doesn't work? What if, all that stuff. But, as with all businesses, you take risks. And that was huge for me. So, moving forward, even if I do other businesses or try to expand my business, I'm not nearly as hesitant to, go get some capital, and just follow your plan, have a good plan, feel good about it. Nothing's ever, 100% certain, but most of the risks I've taken have always panned out. So I must be doing something right. I forget where we were, Glenn. Did I get off on a tangent?
That's okay. That's all right. We're here for tangents. Yeah. So just kind of going back to my question just around like team and how so you've obviously created the support by leveraging some resources and then figuring, okay, hey, it's obviously like all of us, we have to I've had to do this with my career, step back, reframe, that pause is important to, some aspects have to go. And then you got to invite in some new things that are a little scary.
Yeah.
But it's really that creating that mindset that, hey, I'm going to be successful with this. And I don't have to have the whole entire how to figure it out of the whole entire ladder. You can have a specific strategy or plan, but really that plan, until the rubber hits the road, then you get the real plan of actually how it's interacting with all the things that you conceptually thought were going to go down a certain way.
Right.
But you then realize like, okay, I'm doing this and I can't be great at everything. And who likes doing this better than I do? Because some of these things, I had some bad habits for a number of years where I just did everything. And some of the stuff really like editing my own stuff.
Yeah,
it's just like, it would just drain my battery and my life juice. And so maybe share a little bit about how you step into and some of the obstacles and maybe the mistakes you've made would be really helpful, I think, for our audience.
Well, I think that the reason I brought up the loan was because it gave me the confidence to hire somebody, because my biggest fear was hiring somebody and not being able to pay them. I mean, that to me just is not okay. So with that little bit of cushion, when I came back in 2013, started over, and I hired an occupational therapy assistant, certified assistant. And I've had two. The first one I think was there for a couple of years, and then she left to do something else. I hired another one. The nice thing about the assistant is she can do a lot of the testing protocols for me, and I then take the information and write the report. That was huge for me, instead of doing everything in the evaluation. These are very comprehensive, very long reports. So the other thing,
so basically, I'm the expert. Like the doctor comes in the office, I have the assistant that does the blood work, the measurements, does the stuff that, like, okay, I can pull myself off of that. I can do this.
Right.
Why am I at the?
Exactly.
It's like why?
Yeah.
Why should I do this right now? And who could do this? And maybe, and it also positions you in a different way of relating with the client and the time usage.
Right. And so after that, I thought I shouldn't be doing all the office work, right? I shouldn't be answering the phones. I shouldn't, have to do the billing. So I hired a part-time office manager. Another great thing that I did, because, it all comes down to money and how comfortable you feel, paying a certain amount for your overhead. So I had to let that go. I had to let go of the fear of hiring people. And when I let go of that, I mean, my life, it was so crazy. I'm trying to do it all, you know, Glenn. But when I brought people on, it's amazing how your business accommodates for that. All of a sudden you're getting more referrals, and
Right.
and you don't even know how that happened. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up with that too, in terms of like mistakes or whatever, I think because I was so focused on being successful financially, and my business could only grow at a certain pace, I would start to dabble in other things. I took a lot of real estate classes, and I wanted to do fix and flips. And, you know, I was kind of all over the place. I can't tell you how many make $1 million programs I signed up for, you
Been there,
know.
done that. So,
Yeah, tens of thousands of dollars, time, whatever.
yep.
I finally got to a point and I'm like, you know what, Sherry, you don't need to be a millionaire. You just need to be a good OT. And I remember telling myself this vividly: you're a really good OT, be a really good OT. And so I let go of all these millionaire dreams and I focused on being a good OT. Well, things really exploded then.
I
It
can
was
relate
just,
to this. I can relate to that. That's like, yeah, as soon as
yeah,
you just stop trying to like, oh, I'm more than just this. It's like, why don't I just do what I'm great at
right.
and see where that takes me and
You
let
were,
that expand.
you know, you hear people say surrender. I surrendered. I was like, I give
No,
up. I
no.
surrender. You know, my life is going to be what my life's going to be. And as soon as I did that,
But by the way,
everything.
hey, before you say, as soon as I surrendered, now, if you're like me, which the how hard did you fight the good fight before you surrendered?
Well, let's
You
see.
held on for some
Okay.
time.
Well, let's just say I came back in 13, started over again, doing too many things at once. Um, it, maybe 10 years ago. So, you
Yeah.
know, it, that's pretty much when I got back into expert witness work. Well, actually, when I came back in 13, I got into the real estate, and the real estate market turned on a dime on me. So that was more like 15. So then I'm like, okay, I've just got to focus and be a good OT. And when I did that, you know, another analogy I think of, like relationships.
Yeah.
When you're in a relationship with somebody and you're coming at them all the time, right? Coming at them, they're backing up, you know, you back up, things come to you. And I think energetically, that's what happened. I mean, I was just, you know, if you're going to do the law of attraction, nothing could be attracted to me because I was always going at something.
So
I
true.
didn't create a vacuum. That, you know, things
Right. You
can
have to
come.
create that vacuum. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
So that's, I try and tell when I talk to young people who are really driven to do this and do that, I'm like, drive is great. You have to have drive. You're not going to make it if you don't have drive, but don't take it past a point, you know, where things can't come to you. Just let some things be, trust in the process, and trust that your positive energy that you're putting out there and this thing that you're passionate about, it will bring good things to you without a doubt.
Yeah, like you have to do your part. I always feel like it's like life is like, you know, you go for it, you put in your effort, you put in your work, and then the universe meets you the other half of the way. And then so you work it, you put forth that effort and intention, and then you actually got to do this counterintuitive thing of just like, okay, now I'm going to let go and trust flow for things to flow in. But it's so true about how, yeah, if you're just drive is great to a certain extent. Everything is to a certain extent.
Yeah. And it's to become more aware of your thoughts. So for instance, recently I connected with another physical therapist, and we've been talking about opening up a clinic in Colorado Springs or Phoenix. And I've been thinking about this for years, you know, because I know the need is there, but it was a challenge for me to think, oh my God, how am I going to find somebody, get them trained? You know, it was just kind of it was a jumble in my head. I just couldn't get it down on paper. So I'm talking to this guy and he's like, yeah, you know, let's get going on this. I'm like, okay. So I came home and I started making all these phone calls to people in Colorado Springs, gathering up all this information. All of a sudden, what seemed unsurmountable became like the easiest thing in the world. I'm like, And I recognized that. I'm like, why did this flip a switch? Because I had another person kind of confirming it was a good idea. I think that's all it was for me, just questioning if it was a good idea or not, because I don't really have a lot of peers that do what I do. And it made me realize we just, of course, we create this fear, which is founded on nonsense. And still, after being through everything I've been through in my life and succeeding at so many things, to find that that is still there, and impeding my progress but it happens. So you're like, okay, you recognize it. That was funny. Haha. I mean, I had to laugh at it, right?
Yep.
And just keep moving forward.
Well, tell us a little bit about what you're moving forward into now. I know we touched briefly on what you're up to, but I think, folks want to get a hold of you and get an understanding of how they really benefit from connecting you. I'd love to connect our audience with you.
Right.
So maybe just share a little bit about what you're doing these days and what your mission is.
So still obviously continuing with the expert witness practice for functional capacity evaluations. I am joining forces with this physical therapist, and our vision is to basically combine our resources, our time, our efforts, and hire some qualified therapists to open up other clinics, train them to do what we're doing here. This is a totally underutilized service around the country. And I am passionate about what I do. And I know with 150% certainty that this service has to be available everywhere. And occupational therapists need to understand how incredibly important and valuable this service is in the legal system. And I know occupational therapists don't become therapists to sit on a witness stand, but wow, if you want to make an impact on somebody's life, being a therapist, helping somebody's elbow tendonitis is great, but this goes way above and beyond. So I want to go out and speak. My vision is to man my clinics here and then go out on the road and provide educational seminars to occupational therapists and connect with attorneys in different cities and bring them together, teach them how they can provide these services, expert witness services, to bolster their cases so people are getting the settlements that they need to hopefully get back some sense of quality of life. Yeah. That's the vision. So that's definitely coming up.
And then how would they find you online? What's the best location and direction?
My website is startingpointrehab.com, and my email is Sherry, SHERRY @startingpointrehab.com. My cell, I'm happy to give that, 303-552-4220. Yeah, give me a buzz if anybody out there knows how to get this thing going, and I can help, the world set up some clinics, bring occupational therapists and attorneys together in any way. I would greatly appreciate some input.
Yeah, I know you're very passionate and very serious about this work, and I also don't want people connect with you though snot pouring out their nose, because you're quite hilarious. But I really appreciate your mission and how you're being led. I mean, maybe there's like, okay, I need to be doing these things, and here's this next focus and what I'm supposed to be doing next. But it seems like you really listen to truth, and you listen to the guidance of, you can call it God, source, but you're being guided by like, this is what I'm here to do. And it's very clear. And I think that's for a lot of us entrepreneurs, that we might be, oh, these guys are doing this over here, so maybe I should get into that.Maybe I should try these things out. Right. But that can get you a little off track. Like the more accurate you are with who you are and what you're supposed to be doing in the world, the closer you get to that. It just means that previous chapters of things you've done, some of the stuff's not going forward with you. And if you can align with what that calling is, everything just kind of comes together. I hate to use this, but like, it's magical. These things come together, like you said, they flow in.
And there's no doubt I was put on the earth to do what I'm doing. There's no other job on the planet that would match up, with my skill set, my personality. And I'm so grateful for that. And I'm always amazed at that chance meeting with the lady that moved into my building, because I wouldn't be here doing what I'm doing and impacting lives the way I am. And so, yeah, there's a lot of luck involved, but you have to open up your soul. I mean, obviously I did take the initiative and I walked over and I asked her. So,
Right.
if I
You're
hadn't
doing
have done that,
part, yeah, but it's
so
still
I'll take a
bumping
little
into
bit of credit, but
but still bumping into the next rung on the ladder, that makes sense now looking back. But when you're doing that, it wasn't part of like a specific map. You need to do this thing.
right,
So there's
right.
the entrepreneurial spirit is, it's kind of like, well, I'm just going to work with what's in front of me. And it happened.
Right.
Maybe that's being provided. Maybe just,
Mhm.
if you can open your ears and your eyes, like and be patient,
Mhm.
and allow things to be messy.
Yeah. And I also believe that I don't think things happen by chance, really. And I've come to learn and know when a door closes, it's for a reason. And I used to get so frustrated and, oh, why didn't this happen? And of course it leads to something else. And so I've gotten much better at, almost being grateful for the doors that close on me, because I know something better is around the corner.
Yep.
I know it at this point. It's happened so many times. It's, can't be chance.
Yeah, it's amazing how in your younger years we agonize over those things,
Yeah, I
and then now we go. Even when I get agitated with, something happens out externally, and I notice an agitation, I see it as an opportunity for growth and transformation.
Mhm.
So I'm like, oh, here it comes again. I have this thing going on inside me that I'm experiencing that doesn't feel so comfortable. And if I
Mhm.
go and distract myself and go seek, external distractions or resources, sometimes it's better just to go sit with the intelligence that's percolating up from our subconscious.
Right.
And
Yeah.
by checking in with myself, it's like, oh, okay, I can be with what's happening and lovingly accept what's going on versus tolerating or trying to like deny it and resist it. That life is guiding us,
Yes.
and
Yep.
we just have to get quieter. The
You
world's
do.
very loud, and if we can
Yep.
spend more time in quiet contemplation and self-reflection,
Yes.
um, things will be revealed in due time, and usually not
Yeah.
that long. Like it's just that moment feels like it's never going to end, maybe,
Right.
but it does.
It does. Yep. You'll
Uh,
only be uncomfortable for a little while.
yeah.
And, fear and excitement are pretty darn close to each other, right?
Mhm.
So, I'm still fearful of things. I can dangle 300 feet off the deck climbing and be perfectly calm, but thinking about opening a
True.
clinic, but realizing, I should just be excited about it.
Yeah. Well, I'm just excited coming into the call, leaving the call
Yeah,
today. Hopefully this was a great listen, and I took a ton of notes, and I think this is just, we're going to invite you back again at some point for another conversation, and
great.
just always great to share space with you. And I just want to thank everybody for tuning in, and hopefully got some great value, and you know how to get a hold of Sherry now if you have some questions. And she's just a pleasure to work with and connect with as a person, not just an occupational therapist. So as a fellow human.
Thanks, Glenn. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye bye, everybody.